Hey, what's up, everybody? We're back for your monthly installment of BFM, Big Fucking Mood. We're now over here in not January. Fuck, dude, I'm still living in fucking last month. I'm feeling the margaritas coming onto me. Now we're in February, and I found this movie kind of on a whim. I didn't really see trailers for it. I went into it super vanilla. It's The Little Things, which is big starring good old Jared Leto, my boy. Remy Malik, and of course, one of the greatest kings that has ever acted, Mr. Denzel Washington. So I was going through HBO Max, and I was just trying to find something to watch, middle of the night, stoned as hell, and I came across this, and I got, oh, okay, Denzel's in it, Jared Leto's in it, Remy Malik, I saw him in Queen, haven't seen him in much else. I liked his performance. I think this should be a pretty solid movie. But what it really got to me was the psychological thriller in the synopsis. And there's like that small little like teaser that it shows, when you're kind of hovering over or when you click on the actual title. So I kind of watched that. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And man, this movie was great. There's a lot of really fun elements. There's a lot of things that work phenomenally well. There's just the storytelling is, I think, very peak. I think this was, and I found out later this actually was written a long time ago, but it felt like something different. Like it was a different taste in my mouth than what I'm normally used to or normally what I've seen, over the last like 5, 10 years. So I watched it, and then when you guys came out, we all watched it over here, and let's get into it, man. It's essentially what we have is we have a whodunit, right? So we've got a deputy sheriff who works in a separate county. Then we have your homicide detective. Then we have the potential killer. Now, the film starts off with this girl almost getting kidnapped. She gets saved. Then we start getting into Denzel's character, who is the deputy. He ends up having to go down to LA to go pick up some evidence for a case that's going on in the Kern County area where he's currently residing in. And then he runs into Rami Malek's character, who's a homicide detective, who is taking over a case that's very similar to what Denzel had experienced many years before when he used to be on the force. And we could just start right there. Everything I've seen Denzel in has always been some kind of like cop thing or FBI agent thing or like someone who's just a bona fide badass. And I think he pulled out all the stops in this one. And after seeing it again with you guys, I watched a little bit of it again last night. The more I looked at his character, the more I thought, yeah, this was the best approach really to take that role for what unfolds in the film.
Yeah, I think so too. I just gotta say, I did watch the trailer when they showed it off for the first time, and at the very end of the trailer, they showed Denzel in I think it's the apartment, and then there's all the trash bags right there, right? And then that's what he says, like, it's the little things, Jimmy. That's what you get you caught. And I was like, oh, they're gonna fucking show the twist in the fucking trailer. I'm like,
Oh,
so he,
so that's what you meant.
yeah. I was like, oh, so he did it. Okay. I'm like, goddamn, these trailers always have to ruin it. But then watching it, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna come in here with an open mind. Like, I'm just gonna expect whatever. Like, surprise me. And sure enough, they did surprise me, which is good. And he does play the role well, and it is refreshing to see him be this cop because even though he's done it many times throughout his career, he's a lot older now. Like
Yeah.
you can see it on his face that he's older, so he's playing into that for the role, and that makes it refreshing for me with him. So I was like, this is great.
Yeah, just because he's done it time and time again, just because of his age, and like I think we all said it at certain points, like, man, Denzel's really getting up there. His age is really showing, and he carried that with him in the entire film, and it makes sense for his character. He used to be a homicide detective, just like Rami Malek's character Jimmy. He's trying to solve his own case that was from I think like 10 years ago or 5 years ago. Now trying to solve Jimmy's case at the same time, and it's like you're carrying that exhaustion with you. Like at some point, something happened in Denzel's career where, as the cop, as the homicide detective, to make him so exhausted of everything that he had to go and be a deputy for whatever reason. And we then find out that, he had the whole train wreck happened, right? Worked a case too hard, had a triple bypass, divorced his wife, and left town. So I mean, with all those different elements, it just makes so much more sense for him to have chosen that route to go for the entire film. But also Remy Malek's character, man, he that was a good time. Like I said, I've only really seen him in Queens. I can't think of anything else that I've really seen him in, and I really liked his performance there. But in this one, it was some obviously something very different. You know, we're not dealing with like a documentary, on like Queen, right? Where there's a lot of music involved, a lot of all these kinds of like over the top things that you got to do. This was very more reserved, very much more there methodical. Is that even a fucking word? Like there was a there was a rhyme to his reason essentially, and it was nice to see like because you then also see his decline and what you could have imagined was also Denzel's character's decline when he was the homicide working a very similar case. So to see that interesting juxtaposition of like someone who's really, really trying to get this done and figure it out for his own reasons versus somebody who already lost, right? Now he's trying to rebuttal. Now he's trying to come back from grands. Now he's trying to make the losers run from like being in, 500th place at like a 1,000 man tournament, right? He's trying to make this whole losers run, but he already has like that one L. He loses this one, that's it for him.
Yeah, and he definitely pulls off that well with his character. Like you can see the frustration, the anger that he has, especially towards the end when the big event happens with him and Jared Leto. Yeah, I haven't really seen him in a main role. I've seen him in stuff here and there, and it's just like a fun time for him. But when he gets serious, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is why he's casted in these types of films. Like he is impressive with how he carries himself.
Yeah, he's definitely got the range for it. As I was watching it again last night, I think I only got halfway through, but just the things that he does, like when he's going over to the print lab and he starts to get angry with, the scientist there, versus when he's talking to one of the missing girl's parents. He's like, "No, I'm gonna find her. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna get this done." And then to another scene where his wife tries to turn over in bed to, hold him, and he's just sitting outside, head in his hands, trying to understand what the hell's going on with this case. No, but it really is the end of the day a whodunit, and I thought about this for a while. I'm a pretty big Jared Leto fan. I've seen a lot of his movies besides the Joker impersonation that he has. But like all of his other films, like Mr. Nobody was really solid. Requiem for a Dream, I think, is probably Jared Leto's best film I've ever seen, which we will definitely do an episode on at some point in time. That's a beautiful, very tragic, depressing movie. But I've always been a fan of him, and I'm really okay with him coming in about halfway into the movie because the stage is set for so many other elements and really the other two big players. Like we do have a lot of side characters, I mean a lot of support characters, but essentially this is a three-man show, right? You could do this in like a small theater stage as well. Jared Leto, Rami Malek, and Denzel. Like you really could because it really revolves around these three characters. And I feel like him coming into the second act was perfect, especially for the way that everything was transpiring with the case.
Yeah, because it's the first act was all about setting up our pieces, understanding how this game is going to be played for this movie, and then once Heeks comes in and is an important piece for the story, that's like, okay, the game starts now. Let's get these established characters into this situation and see where their faults and their strengths come into play.
I think one of my favorite scenes still, and this is what I saw in like the little teaser before I started watching the movie the first time, was there was no audio, but it was just kind of like the visuals, and it was the scene where Denzel has those three suspects that worked at the appliance store. Remy went and got him all the information, and there's only one guy who's in like mid 30s who lives nearby in Hollywood. Denzel goes to his house, starts looking at his car, and just that whole interaction. It's like, "Oh, I'm looking to buy your car." He goes, "This one's not for sale." There's another one. He's like, "Well, how is it?" He goes, "It's fine." He goes, "How's the trunk space?" He just looks at him and he puts his hand down. He goes, "It's standard." Like at that point, that's where I'm like, okay, this is what you're trying to do. This is the direction you're putting us into, where this could potentially be our boy, but is it really, right? Because he's so nonchalant about everything.
Yeah, he's kind of a dick. At least in the beginning. That's kind of why I think I like Rami Malek a lot in this movie because he's probably my favorite character in this movie. Just because the fact that like he was a an asshole in the beginning, because he's had a few, I don't know, fucking, he's had a few cases under his belt and stuff. So he thinks you can kind of tell he's hot shit, or he thinks he's hot shit. As the story progresses, he figures out like, oh shit, well this is real. We gotta do some stuff. The whole character change is just I like it, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, and I think what's nice is they mentioned it a couple times that he's a college kid. Obviously, he mentions that he goes to church, and that
Mm,
was one small thing that they touched on with the head chief when Denzel went to first go and talk to him about the evidence they had to go pick up. He's like, "Oh, I see you're still with the church," and the chief is like, "Yeah, it could probably do you some good." And then
mm,
later on, Denzel finds out that Remy's character goes to church. He tells his girls and one scene like, "Oh, did you pray tonight?" "Yes, Daddy." And then there's that whole little bit of dialogue, which I think is really strong, and I think this goes even more so to what you said, Jerry, of like that whole character development of what he had to go through. Like, this is real now. Like, I can't just think of anything else, where they're standing on the bridge, they're conversing about an older case. Remy's character says to Denzel, like, "Hey, do you believe in God?" And Denzel says something along the lines of, "Oh, when I wake up in the morning and I see dew on the lawn and like a beautiful sun in the sky, yeah, I think there's a God." And then he says after that, he goes, "But when I see this stuff, I think he's well past giving a shit."
yep.
And like seeing Remy's character's face just kind of drop, like, fuck, you're right. Now he's at the position where I wouldn't say he's fighting against his faith, but he's like, is the faith really that important when it comes to my job and what I have to do? And then that kind of trope is touched on again. I think it was the scene right before where they had just found another body dumped in the river, and Remy's character, oh no, Denzel says, "You know what? You got to take care of these people, even if they're dead, but don't be the angel. You can't carry them anywhere. Once they're here, they're here. But you got to do what you can do to protect them, but don't play the angel part." So it's a consistent trope that I think is really important for both characters. So Denzel was a obviously we have the idea that he's not a religious person. When he gets to the hotel, he sees that frame of the angel holding Jesus, and he's kind of laughing at it like, "Oh, haha, like really?" You know. Then he meets Remy's character Jimmy, who obviously is still very much into it. He's still carrying it with him on every day on the job, just like the chief is. But at the end of the day, is that really what's going to help you? You know what I mean?
It's the veteran talking to the new guy. Let's be real. Like you're all happy and all that, but when it comes to brass tacks, that's not what we do here.
Exactly.
Because it is that classic trope with Jimmy where he's just like, yeah, I'll make sure. We'll find your daughter. We'll bring her back. That's always in these kind of films with the hopeful guy, and then the real guy says like, you can't say that because what if we don't? Yeah, and yeah, he thinks he is hot shit at the same time too because he's got this position over at the precinct. He's always on television telling it how
Rami
it
Malek
is.
just has that fucking "I'm better than you" face.
Yeah, it's that jawline too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then it starts dwindling down as early as his boss saying just like he asked his boss, he's like, wait, are you saying like I was lucky I got this position because Denzel like left? And it's like, yeah, exactly, like that's the only reason you're here.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it wasn't by the grace of God. It was like, no, we need somebody to fill the shoes. You got the requirements down. You're doing good in school, like you're a college kid. People seem to like you. Why not? Why not give you a chance? But and I again, those are those little scenes where you can see it in his character, like, okay, not everything is the way that it is in a book, or the things that
Mm.
I've known, or maybe he was a beat 'em cop. So it's really nice to see, and again, just leading up to that point where we finally get Jared Leto in the film is so nice. Especially when we get to the whole transition where now he's the potential suspect, and that whole scene where they bring him in was so good. Oh man, where they're trying to question him, and he knows so much about the whole process, and he's like, "Oh wait, I want the card. Can I keep the card? I like the card.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, where's my lawyer? I just want to know he's in the building." Like everything he knows about the processes, and then he says, "Well, I just really like crime. I really like this whole process, so I just know a lot about it." And like him dicking around with the other two and them trying to push down on him, I thought was just such a really great dynamic between three really different kinds of actors. right? You've got Denzel who's super seasoned. You've got Remy who's really working his way up there, and you've got Jared who's, kind of like in the middle, right? And just the dynamic was incredible
A
to
chaotic
me.
neutral.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's that huge crime file. I think is the term for it.
It was just so fun. I think you said it best, Jerry. So you got like the chaotic neutral, you have the lawful chaotic, and then you have the lawful good. It really is. It is important to say, and I said this right before we started recording. I don't know if you caught me when I said this, Jerry, but I was looking into the movie a little bit some more to see if the director, who was also the writer, had made a statement of like who actually was the killer before we get to that point. And he had said, no, I wanted it ambiguous when I wrote this, and he actually wrote this in 1993, that he had already had this done, set, and set ready to go. In interview, he had mentioned that Jared Leto had said, "Well, I have to, for my direction, I have to choose one way or the other. Am I good or am I bad?" Even though the director said, "No, I want it to be a gray area," and he tells Leto,
Just be sus.
"Dude, pretty much he's like, you make your decision, but don't ever tell me. I don't want to know." Reading that and then now thinking about the movie, I'm like, that makes a lot more sense as to why there are certain scenes where he plays so much more for it and other scenes where he's just kind of like the guy like, dude, I gotta work tomorrow, man. I got shit to do. I don't really want to fucking be here.
And I think it's better for this film to be open ended because that's it's a character study, this film. So having the answer at the end doesn't really change anything for what the movie's trying to show.
Exactly. And I feel that it really did a good job, even right up to the climax at the very end of the film. But the interactions between Leto and Malik, and then in Washington, they were just so much fun. Like I think one of my favorite scenes is where they're on the highway and Denzel's following him, and then he pulls over, pulls up to the other side, tries to look for Leto in his car on the other side. Then he pulls up next to him, rolls down the window. How's the trunk space? And just drives off in a totally different car than what he really wanted. So he already knows at that point. He's like, oh, okay. And I think that's the scene right before they take him in to go talk to him. But those scenes like that, and then the scene in the bar, that was a lot of fun. I think that was a good time. And just the chief warning Jimmy, like, hey, don't get involved with this guy. He's a bad dude. Like he's not worth your time. If you stick with him, you're gonna get run into the ground. And we're kind of left thinking like, okay, why? Now, I think there was a point, and I think I said it to you guys when we were all watching it. There's that scene that you mentioned you saw in the trailer, Danny, where it's Denzel's character and he's in the hotel room and you see all the photos of the girls that have been killed, their mugshots, and then it pans over to him seeing one of the girls there, and then there's the other girls in the apartment. So at that point, that's where I thought, oh, dude, this can only go one of two ways. This can only go one of two ways, and it's leaning towards the other route. And the route for me was he had some regret. He probably killed one of these girls on accident because we kept flashing back to that scene, like his last day on the job, essentially, from what we can gather. And then the film just kind of progresses. And that's exactly what had happened. He had killed one of the girls on accident, and now he's living with this, and that is what really destroyed him from, it wasn't even working the case that hard. It was that he had killed an innocent girl, and now he has to live with that. So he's really painted to be at that point, oh, maybe he is a villain because why is he so invested in it?
Yeah, and especially when all the other characters from the town that he used to know, they're acting different when he's around. And even when they told him like, "Hey, don't hang out with this guy. He's bad news," and the way like they were shifting their bodies and the tone and all that really shows that like, oh yeah, something's going on. And that's when I started questioning. I'm like, oh, maybe this guy, like maybe they didn't really show the twist in the trailer. Maybe that was the play. And I was like, now it's time to really pay attention.
And I think that was what a really nice touch. It's not just the chief. It's not just some of the guys in the precinct. It's also the girl in the mortuary. The what do you call him? The mortician. Who's like, look, I don't know what the fuck you're doing here. I don't know what you want. I'll help you, but when it comes down to it, I can't save your ass. I can't do it again. So now we're kind of left thinking, okay, what did you really do? And then that's the moment where we really have the idea like, okay, he really did something fucked up. A lot of scenes later, when she goes to do the autopsy on the girl that he shot, she picks up the bullet and goes, "I'm putting it down as this." And the fact that she keeps that bullet with her everywhere she goes was just a really nice touch for me. Like, dude, that's a reminder. Like, you can't, even though that's your buddy, that's your man right there, you can't trust him at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, it's the little things, again, that can make you lose everything that you have going on. And that's exactly what happened for Denzel. The moment of like, oh my God, I'm gonna shoot fire for whatever reason, and then that was it for him. Everything else went downhill from there.
And I think I have to say that's probably my only problem I have with the film is that situation. It's great for his character, right? Because that drives him down this path that we see him get to in the present time. But I think I told you guys after watching, I was like, so, but why was the girl, like, why was she still alive and walking around in this forested area off the highway? That's the only thing I couldn't really wrap my head around of how she was able to get free.
That I'll agree with you on that too. How did this happen to be like that kind of coincidence, essentially? You know, it could be that maybe she wasn't completely dead, she escaped, whatever the case was. But the ultimate motive for it, I think, worked out well. But that starting point for it is it's a little shaky.
I mean, again, like I said, it's fine for Denzel's character and like the purpose of him being here in the film, but that was just like my only gripe. Like I knew like something happened that really bothered him, sure, but I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But then it's like, but wait, it makes sense, but does it really make sense at the same time?
Right.
But like I said earlier, you know, this is a character study, so that doesn't really change the way the film is structured and like the purpose of it. So I think that's why I'm more okay with it now.
I will say the other scene that's nice is when they finally get into Leto's apartment, and Denzel's going through everything. He's trying to figure everything out, and Leto was kind of like scapegoated to come out of there to go to a bar to meet up with him to just have a couple drinks. And that's where it really points you to the spot of like, okay, maybe this isn't a gray area anymore. Maybe he actually is the killer because he has these newspaper clippings hidden underneath the floorboard in his apartment.
Yeah, but who doesn't have newspaper clippings under the floorboards? Jared Leto was a fucking weirdo in this movie, dude.
Yeah, I could see that. I could fucks with that. You know, like if I had
Look,
a newspaper clipping when Uncle Al died, I would want to
look.
know.
All I'm saying is Jared Leto in this movie looked like he'd touch a dead body in that way. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, dude, yeah. Oh, dude, he pulled out these cards that was like, wow, dude, that's so there's essentially Requiem of a Dream because I think there's a really good comparison. Requiem of a Dream, Jared Leto's character is hooked up on heroin, so he's always shooting up. So there's certain points where he's like this really drugged out character and he's acting in such a way that when I was watching the little things, I'm like, dude, I can see that. I can see that you pull out that thing that you did like 15 years ago,
Oh,
right?
that's
20
crazy.
years ago up into this new role. And it works out so well. And it works out in a way that's a little bit better for what you're trying to do because you're already living this life as a character of like, dude, I'm just an appliance, mechanic. I don't really care about anything. I go to the strip club, I fuck around, I buy hookers some food, I just live my life. Like I really don't give a shit about anything. But when it comes to other things, I will be anything I want to be, and that's exactly what he shows himself to be when he's getting questioned. And then in the last few scenes where he's talking to Jimmy, like about so many things, and even his interactions with Denzel before we get to that point, it's like I'll play with you because I can play with you. But when it comes to my time, I'm doing whatever the hell I want. And I think that was just such a nice touch. But let's get into this last phase, man. This last phase was fun. I think it was a great time. So we've got a stakeout now with Denzel's character and Remy's. Denzel goes to grab some coffee, and you got Jared Leto like coming over. He's like, "Hey, hey, hey, buddy, hey, 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 guy, I'll take it to dead body." He's like, what? I'll take you to the dead fucking body. It's like, I'll fucking kill you right now. Tell me where there. He goes, nah, I'm not gonna tell you, but I'll take you there. He goes, all right, get in the car. He goes, nah, I want to drive. I want to take you there. Come on, let's go. Let's go. He goes, hey, but your boy, he can't come. It's invite only. And then just that chase scene that goes on, and like all of the small little details that are going on in their dialogue, that's just I see so much fun that Jared Leto's having that whole time. He's like, dude, now I'm driving. Literally, now I'm the driver, you're passenger seat. Like, you listen to me. I'm taking you wherever the fuck I want to go.
And it's at this point too that the timeline has gotten a lot shorter. They're going to be moving the case to a different group.
Yeah, the FBI is starting to kick in. So they've only got, I think it was like 2 days at this point, right before the stakeout. They've got 2 days to solve the case before
Yeah,
the FBI steps in.
yeah. So that's starting to make our characters here more desperate into making sure this is the guy. And plus, with all the tension of them wasting their time, quote unquote, staking out this guy because he's just fucking around for the most part, right? And I think that has to do with Jared Leto's character knowing that they're there for him, and that gets the excitement going on. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm part of a stakeout. I need to go to the strip club.
It's like, dude, I have never gotten so hard by people looking at me. Let's go.
Exactly.
Let's...
Yeah. And so he was saying the right pieces, playing this guy right into his hands, and that's the reason why it's like, okay, fine, I'll go in the car with you. Let's just go find this body.
Yeah, because he's desperate to find this girl because there's a scene that he says earlier on where her parents come into the station, and his assistant is like, or his person underneath him, I don't know what the position's called, but they're like, hey, these are her parents. They think she's dead. And I think this line is perfect because I think this works out really, really well. And I used to watch a lot of Criminal Minds, so I think this was so true, like in its own form, where where Jimmy goes, well, did you find a body? And she says no. And then he goes, then it's a missing persons case. I'm gonna go get a fucking sandwich. Like until we find a
Mm-hmm.
body, she's still missing. So at this point in the film, where Leto is like, "Oh, I'll take you there. I'll take you to find the body." He's like, now he's desperate. Now he's at his wit's end. Like, I'll do anything it takes to find this one girl. And I think a really big play in this, as opposed to any of the other girls that were just hookers or like just regular people in society who had really no family connection, he saw this as potential like his daughter. When he went to the parents' house, was like, "Oh, this is our daughter. These are her videos," and now it became real more personal to him. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what if that was my kids, right? What if that was one of my girls that was kidnapped? And I think what also paints Denzel to potentially be this villain is when he goes to his house, he goes, "Oh, you got beautiful girls. They're all beautiful." And it's like, my guy, hold on. What you doing? And the scene that I think kind of like helps out with a little bit more theory crafting of what Denzel's character really could be is where he goes to see his ex-wife. And they're having their small little dialogue, and then she goes, "Well, how you been?" Or like, "How are you?" And he's like, "You know me." And she kind of takes a step back and breathes in, and she goes, "Yeah, I do know you." And she's like, "Well, I gotta go." She immediately subtracts herself from the conversation at that point because at first she's like, "Oh, like it's nice to see you," and then she obviously, if he was married to this woman for God knows how long, had 2 kids with her, there's a lot of time there, a lot of history there, and for her to have had the divorce with him, and now him come back and act this kind of way, it makes all the more sense, right? That he could potentially be this person. He could potentially be the actual villain of the entire film.
Yeah, I could see it going that way.
Yeah, and then you want to derail the young cop, like, oh, I totally killed this girl on accident, quote unquote, right? Because I wanted this case to be solved. maybe it wasn't solved, whatever the case was, and then I went crazy. So I want to make sure for my own subconscious that the case is actually solved when it really never was. So I'm going to derail you into that point. And I think what's nice, and this was one of the lines that when I was watching it last night, really stuck out to me, where when Denzel goes to give him the list of suspects that worked at the appliance store, he's like, "Hey, it could be a long shot, but you do what you want with it." And Jimmy goes, "Aren't they all long shots?" And then
Mm-hmm.
before they depart, he goes, "Hey, you know what? I just want to tell you one thing. If you want to solve your case to solve mine, that's fine. But if you're going to be pissing on my leg and calling it rain, you can go fuck off." Right? And that's where I really realized, like, hey, you know what? As much of a newbie as this guy is, he's not an idiot. He's not a fucking moron. He knows himself between the streets and in the books as well. So just seeing that comparison between the two, because we have the idea that Denzel's just kind of like a street smart kind of guy, right? Not really book smart. He does things his own way, which is said a lot throughout the film. He has his own method of doing things. But at the end of the day, did it really get him to where he wanted to go? Right? And then there's the other piece of dialogue where Jimmy says to Denzel, "How the hell did the best detective in the department go 15 years without a promotion?" Right? Because just because you do things your way doesn't mean it's the right way. And obviously, if you can get the job done, that's fine. But is that really what people need to move on?
I don't think Denzel wanted to do this. Wanted to go back to this anyway, because it was just going to open up another demon that he couldn't close the door to.
Oh yeah, in the beginning of the film, when his
He's like,
CO is like,
this is
yeah,
in our jurisdiction. Instead of
y-
DA's.
yep, and he's like, I got nobody else. And then when he gets there, obviously his
His
interest is
DA
peaked.
turned on. He couldn't help it.
Yep, but his interest is peaked when he sees Jimmy, giving the press speech.
Yeah.
And then obviously the journalist comes in. He's like, "Hey, what's up, man? What you got? You got the sauce. You got the scoop. Give me the cheese, man. What you know?" And then he asks him the question, right, to Jimmy. It's like, oh, he tells him like, "Hey, so you don't have any suspects, right?" And that's the important question, In those moments we had the press conference with the detective there, like those are the real important questions. Like when just recently watched, which is a really good documentary. I think it's like 4 episodes, 5 episodes about the Night Stalker.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's really good. But they they show flashbacks, right? Of like when these young cops, detectives were getting interviewed. So like I had that in the back of my mind while watching that scene. It's like, dude, that's some real stuff. Like if you have that one guy who says that one piece of intel to a reporter, your whole case can be screwed. Everything can go out of whack. Or it can work in your favor. It really depends. But then the detective obviously gonna look at you like, wow, you're a fucking dick. Why would you do that to me? But again, you got Denzel who didn't want to be put in that spot, but because him going back to his own stomping grounds and hearing about a case that could potentially be close to his, if not the same one, he's going to be the shark that goes for the bite every single time. But yeah, man, this last phase, I think is the best part of the film. I think it's I think it's so good. When you're in the car, you got the high speed chase, you got the suspenseful music, just playing, and Jared Leto's just like dicking around the entire time in the whole ride. And you can kind of like see it in Malik's face, like, dude, I don't give a fuck what you gotta say. If I find this body, I'm done. I'm ready to go. And then we get to the site. The suspense is just built up. It's like, dude, my butthole is clenched so tight, like even a turtle head couldn't come through at this point. And then he pulls out the shovel and he's like, and Leto's like, nah, man, you can dig. No, you're doing it. No, that's my fingerprints. I'm not a fucking moron, dude. Come on, you're gonna fucking do it, dude. Let's go.
Yeah, and
And then,
that's what really makes it up in the air if Leto was the guy or not, because it's like he's obviously just playing around, having fun. But and then there's also the things where he knows stuff that's not publicly known, and just the way he talks about like what's going on. And it's like it's such an up and down situation of just like, god damn it, is this guy the one? Because everything is kind of matching up. He left the town where the last murder was, a few weeks after. and he kind of jumps from jobs to jobs. So it's like this guy could be it, but we still up in the air because he's still having fun joking around. He's like, oh, if these cops want to mess with me, I'll mess with them too.
Exactly. Now, there is a point I will make about that, Danny, um, only because it just popped up in my head. So in the scene where Denzel is chasing Leto on the highway during the daytime, and they have that little cute interaction about the trunk space,
Yeah.
he calls Jimmy and is like, "Hey, when you guys were on dispatch, did you say this about this marker?" And he's like, "Yeah, we only saw on dispatch, but we didn't make it out to the public." He's like, "Oh, okay." So when Denzel is going to investigate and he breaks into the apartment of Leto, there is a police radio there.
Mm,
And I don't think it's illegal to have one for whatever reason, at that time. So I think that also like gives you more of the gray area. Like, could it really be him? Could he just be a guy who just knows a lot? And like you said, like at this point, oh man, this is so exciting. Like I'm important. I'm just regular fucking dude who like lives life, and now I'm a potential suspect. This is cool. Like I am so hot for all of this, right? So it gives you so much more when we get to that scene of him like, no, dude, I know how this goes. Like I don't want to be framed for something I didn't do. So you're gonna be the one to dig up all the graves, or the grave.
okay. Yeah, I
I
think I
gotta.
missed that part with them saying it on the police scanner. I thought he just said we haven't said it publicly yet.
Yeah, no. So he does say we didn't say it publicly, but we said it on the police scanner, and like
Okay.
obviously if he lives in the area, he's gonna pick up that traffic and be like, oh, okay, cool, write it down. And then if he's just driving down the highway at his normal routes, he knows he's being followed. He's like, oh, dude, I could do this no problem, and just again continue the fun ride that he's having.
Right.
But what really gets me, and I knew this was gonna happen. Like when I saw it happen, I was like, yeah, buddy, this is what we're doing. When he goes, oh shit, I don't think this is the right spot. Hold on, I think it's over here. And then
That was crazy.
you just see fucking Remy's character like, all right, dude, fine, I'm getting this body. And then and then like we go back to the chase where Denzel's trying to find him, and then we go back to them, and he's like, oh, I'm such an idiot. This isn't the right spot either. I think it's right over here, and like it just keeps going and going and going. And that's the part I think is so much fun, like just to see, because again, it just proves so much more of that gray area. Like I could have done it, but did I? I don't know. I'm just gonna we're just gonna dick around, dude. We're just gonna play some friendlies. We're gonna have a good time. That's all we're doing. I think what was the ultimate line for me was when I was like, okay, I don't really think he did it, but I'm still not sure. Is where he literally is like you start to see the sunrise, and he's still out there digging up all these holes, and he's like, dude, I gotta go to work in a couple hours. Like I felt that the way he said it, I felt that when I have to wake up for work in the morning, like, ah, dude, I can't, man. I can't play this next chapter in Yakuza. I gotta go to work in the morning, dude. I gotta stop what I'm doing, and that's the feeling I got from him. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know, man. I don't know anymore. And then he starts going off in the whole dialogue of like, which I think was a really really good monologue for Leto to have, like at this point in the film, where he's literally berating Malik the whole time. He's like, "Oh, you think you're just this hot shit cop in Hickville. You want to be this kind of person, but you know what? That's just not the way the world works, right?" So again, now he's another painful reminder to Malik exactly what Denzel was telling him throughout the entire film. Like, hey, dude, the world is fucked up. Like, the world is exactly what it is, and if you're trying to play this character in it, you're not gonna survive, dog. Like, you're gonna be swamped. You're gonna be kicked down to the swamp over and over again.
Yeah, this part was crazy for sure. It was just piling on one after another.
Dude, it was like you get in a fight with your girl, and then she's saying all this shit to you, And then you just want to look at her and be like, God, one day, one day, Alice, one day. Boom, straight to the moon. I get the fuck away from you.
Yeah, man, I felt that hit. As soon as it touched, I was
Oh,
like, oh my gosh, like you could just feel the anger in that swing.
oh, dude, everything he held in the entire film. Like because when we had the scene very early or like midway through where he's talking to the scientist at the print lab, where he literally picks him up by the collar and he's like, "Is this my fucking boy, dude?" And he's giving him some smart ass answer. He's like I felt it. He wanted to beat the shit out of him. He wanted to beat the shit out of Dexter and his whole fucking laboratory, dude. But he's like, I can't. I can't fucking do it. So all of that pent up aggression, the pent up upsets that he can continuously had, and like his case going to be taken away from him in literally mere hours. Boom, that
Damn,
hit.
just like
Oh
that.
man, dude, it was like seeing Ness charge up the forward smash with the baseball bat, right? And then like you're playing somebody online and like dude, he's not going to walk into it. He's not going to walk into it and then they walk into it and you just get the whole like oh, it was so good. It was so good, and then you see him fall apart, and that's when Denzel finally gets there. And then you see Malik like, that was our boy, man. He told me to do all this stuff. Like you just see everything like crumble down, like you messed up that hole in Jenga, and he just, oh, it was so good. And I had a thought. I had a thought when I first watched it, like, dude, he couldn't have died from that. He might still be alive. But then when I saw the body, I was like, oh, dude, he got wrecked. He got hit hard. And then I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, if you got hit with the shovel at that speed and that intensity, straight to the temple, that would be it for you.
Yeah, he didn't take it like a champ, as Negan would say.
It was just, God, and
Yeah.
just the whole thing that Denzel said, where or Malik's like, so what do we do with the body? He goes, pick up one of these holes, dude, and dig him in it.
Yep.
Hmm.
You got
Yeah,
plenty to choose from, dude. Like, and dude, and just that whole like full circle of that scene, I was like, oh my God, that's fucking great. That's so good.
yeah. I thought that stuff was great for Denzel's character because, he likes this guy. He likes this new kid. He sees a lot of potential, and just seeing the way he's reacting and the way this is gonna play out, he's like, oh man, I know this guy is gonna crack. He's gonna spill. Our lives are over, and I don't want to see that happen to him. And so that's why he's so calm and collected, and just says like, okay, we got to do this exactly the way I say. And just the way he sets everything up to make it look like Leto's character left, much like how the killer leaves, was a great move as well. And then of course the last bit here with Denzel as he gives this package to Malik's character, and I was just like, oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen right now.
Oh, dude, yeah. So I don't think we mentioned it earlier, but the girl that Malik was obsessed with of trying to find, she runs. There was a small detail that she runs with a red beret in her hair, right? So, and go ahead, Danny. You give me your sauce on it.
Yeah, so as soon as we saw Denzel going through Leto's apartment and, getting everything in bags and all of that, and then he opens the little compartment on the floor where all the newspaper and like these weird collectibles that he has in there. And like he's looking in there, and then we see the camera where we see him grab something, but we don't get the reveal for it. That's when I knew. I'm like, oh, okay, they're trying to tell us he found this hairpiece that she had. We go back to Malik, and then we see him with his family. It's like, oh, here's a package for you. Opens it, boom, there it is, the red piece. And now he's like, oh my gosh, that was our boy. Now I feel so much better. Now he's not gonna crack, lose under pressure and just confess that what he just did.
Yep,
Damn.
exactly,
Damn.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then
Which made the next scene even fucking juicier.
Oh, dude, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was right when we see Denzel burning all this stuff from Leto's apartment, and I was like, oh, it's gonna do the reveal, isn't it? And then we see, boom, he bought a whole pack of those hair clips, and the red one's missing. And I was like, of course, because he knew this guy's gonna crack. He's too good. He's Christian. You know, he's not hardened enough to handle what he just did.
He's
So
God's
Exactly.
favor.
yeah,
Yeah, he saved the life that he wished was saved for him, you know. And that's important because he talked about, and like I said earlier, don't be the angel for people, dude. Let them do their own undoing. Like let them live their life and let them do what they got to do. But you're in this position, you can protect them. But don't do it. If they're dead, fuck it. But here he is, dude, protecting this one cat to the end of the day. And you can see it in his face when he does it. He's like,
It has to be done.
it's gotta be
He's a
done.
good cop. It has to be done.
Just because he fucked up doesn't mean somebody else should. And that's also important for the entire development of his character. Of like, it's crazy. He went through so much and then was thrown back into the whole pot. And he thought, nah, dude, I'll save this one guy. We'll get someone who's close. Maybe he did it. Maybe he didn't. Who knows? That's the whole gray area of the film, which I think works really, really great. Because typically with whodunits, especially in like stage theater, it's hard, right? You have to do it in a way where, like, if you're not going to say who the killer is, you have to make it completely ambiguous. You have to make it in a way where, like, even if that suspect could have been the killer, you have to make it in a way where, oh, maybe he couldn't have been. Why? Because the alibi checks out, his life checks out, what he does, it makes sense, you know, versus the small things he does in private time, they don't make sense. Like, it has to be an equal 50-50. So, for Leto's character to have been that suspect, and then for him to have gone the extra step of, like, hey, I'll take care of everything. You go to the office, you say, hey, let the FBI take over. I'm going to take 2 weeks vacation because this case has worked me on, and that's all I'm doing, you know? And then what I thought was neat, I don't know if you picked up on this, but what I thought was really neat is when the FBI was there, and again, this is just because I watch a lot of Criminal Minds, and when they pull out a profile of the suspect, every detail they said matched Leto's character.
hmm
I don't know if you guys
Yeah,
picked up on that.
oh yeah,
So when they said
for
that,
sure.
I was like, again, this is moving to the point where he could have been the killer, but again, everything he does in his daily life, he obviously could not be,
It's
right?
just
So
crazy
it's
because you gotta like look at the smaller details and figure out like you get more info than what's really brought on, which adds to the ambiguity of the whole matter because it's like, yeah, he could be the killer, but he's also doing a bunch of shit that's like not really what that's really not really what he would do as a killer. Like,
exactly.
just fuck around with the cops for like a few, unless he was like really genius. And I don't think. What do you do for a day job?
He
he
was
was
a appliance specialist. He
yeah.
fixed fridges and
I mean, he was an engineer, but he didn't go that far into like planning shit out. He's no Zodiac killer.
right, right.
I mean, it did seem like it though, from the way like those girls were tied up on the rock. That was crazy.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, like everything, the way that this dude wrote this story is pretty incredible, right? Because again, with whodunits, you're either going the direction where you find the killer or you don't. And most stories that I've read of whodunit, where you don't have the suspect or the killer ever found, it's usually not done to this kind of caliber, right? It's done to a way where it's kind of like, oh, I can still figure it out. But in this kind of a story, you don't know, which I think is what makes this film even that much more impeccable, right? Because it's literally just character driven. It's like the term Danny said, it's a character study, right? Because you got three different guys, everyone has a whole different dynamic, and the way that they navigate is off the dynamic of the other character.
Yeah. If I had to guess, I would say he probably was Um, just based off of his confidence that he had while he was messing with these guys the entire time. The way he acted when we first saw him in that shop when Denzel was doing the questioning.
I thought he was just a fuckhead, but
Yeah, I
prove me
mean,
wrong.
I guess yeah, that too. But yeah, just everything that he had was. I think it matched up a little too much, and I mean, sure there was those parts where things were slipping, where like if the car was stolen, why didn't you report it? And he's like, I did. It's like we don't have that report, and it's like, oh, actually, that report was there. This dumbass just didn't file it. You know, yeah, it's a lot of back and forth with, God damn it, like, is this the guy? Um, but yeah, I don't know. I would say probably yeah, if I had to make a guess on it.
I think so too, honestly. Because there is that scene, and this could also have just been him also fucking with them, but when he's getting questioned by him and he's getting shown the pictures, he's like, "Oh, she's so beautiful. Oh my God, I like her." Like he gets super ASMR with it, and it's like
Yeah,
he's like, "Oh, dude, yeah." And then when Denzel goes and like he goes and gropes him, he's like, "Hey, hey, hey, buddy, that's my penis.
yeah.
I am hard, but you can't touch me." Like, what's up with that? And Denzel's like, "Oh, dude, he's hard. That's the fucking guy. Like, that's our boy. Like, and it's like, dude, you can't just come up and touch me, bro. Like, no, we don't do that here. We don't do that here." But again, it's like I said this whole time, like so many things point to yes, and the exact same amount of things also point to no. And it really is so open at the end of like who was the actual suspect, who was the actual killer this whole entire time.
Yeah, I think the only missing piece for a hard confirmation would probably be what was his reason for moving from where he lived last time. That's where like the last killing was at.
Well, I'll give you some preface on that. So when I watched the Night Stalker documentary, and when they mentioned the Night Stalker in the very beginning of the film, that actually was put out of the water. The reason why is because the Night Stalker would go from back to back, right? He would take time off, go back to back. When the satiation came in, he's like, I need to do something. He would go and do what he had to do. So that comparison of him to the Night Stalker made so much more sense, especially when they were discussing like, dude, how could he kill people in North County, drop them off in South County, and then vice versa? You know, that was that whole reason why. When I heard that, I'm like, that makes sense. That makes sense that you made that whole small, you dropped that little seed in there, and you're like, yeah, that's my ingredient. That's what I'm running with for this story. But yeah, overall, this was solid. This was really good. I've always liked stuff with Denzel. I liked what I saw in Queen with Malik, and I'll say it again, I'm a really big fan of Jared Leto. Not just because his band back in the day was fucking legit. Yeah, but the movies that I've seen with him in, like Mr. Nobody specifically, and Requiem for a Dream, which I saw I think a year and a half ago or so, that those two alone, but more so Requiem of a Dream, insane. This guy's a monster on the stage, right? And then to see him do what he did here, incredible, completely incredible. But the story, the way that it was written, and the fact that it was written in 1993 when your boy was born, I probably wasn't even shitting out my diapers yet. Like, dog, who are you? You wrote a good story. Come on, give me some more. What else you got in the pod? Come on, man. But yeah, when I saw this movie, I think I told you, Jerry, like the next day. I was like, dude, I saw this movie and it's the fucking BFM. And then when you guys came by, I was like, dude, we have to watch this. Like, it's so good. It's so rich in its own kind of content that it takes away so much.
Yeah, it's a great time, man. I like films like these where it's like there's no plot. It's just we're living the lives of these characters and just seeing what happens.
exactly. It's kind of in that kind of way, and only that kind of way. It's like Air, right? And,
Hmm.
and like a, a, not Apocalypto, Annihilation, right? Like we have these characters, and we have to see what goes on with them. We have to live their lives. We have to see where they came from, what they're going through, and like what they're doing, essentially. And that whole process really breaks down so much more of the human mentality of what people go through on a day-to-day basis, like what they have to experience, the way their motives are run, all these kinds of details. And I feel like this film, out of a lot of the ones that I've seen in the last few years, really did this in a way where the storyboarding was not only impeccable, but the actions of the characters and the actors alone, really took everything that the script had to offer and they ran with it. And they ran with it in a way that was just really incredible.
I realized I haven't seen a lot of Denzel Washington in a while. I've only seen him like do that um give that one speech when he won that award.
Hmm.
But
That
dude,
was like it
he's
was
got some real good stuff, man.
yeah. And then
What
all I remember him from was from Man on Fire, and that shit was powerful. And I had that kind of like that they put Denzel in these kind of movies where it's like he's pretty much will stop at nothing to like for
to do what
justice,
he's
I
got to
guess.
do. Right, right.
He's like the I don't want to say blue collar, but blue collar Batman, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm picking up what you're putting down. But yeah, no, I 100% agree. No, there's some really good movies with Denzel. There's this one I'm thinking of. I can't think of the title. Maybe you can uh, think of the title for me, Danny. But where he's like this CIA cop who's left and now he's coming back and he's doing all this crazy shit. It's like Mission Impossible type stuff. But he's like a fucking bona fide badass.
Yeah, he had like a John Wick thing going on with his movies called Equalizer.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one I was thinking of. But yeah, dude, I mean, like, I think everybody brought something different to the table, And like I said earlier, you got Denzel, who's super seasoned. Like, this guy's like a perfect medium rare steak. You got Malik, who's obviously doing what he can do. So he's not super oven roasted yet, but he's like we just put him into the oven. He's gonna start baking in just a little bit. And then you got Jared Leto, who's like, he's the wild card, you know? So the dynamic of these actors alone, just in what they're known for and then to do what they've done here, it it, it was a blend. It was like getting the right Mexican cheese blend for my quesadilla. But yeah, I'm glad you guys like this movie. I knew when I watched it entirely it was a BFM. It is a little slow, but I think it's definitely worth paying attention to the details. I mean, it's called The Little Things for a reason, right? And Denzel said it, I think, like two or three times in the film. So it's it's those small little things that are going to make the story or help you understand the story at a much bigger pace, right? So you can kind of start to put the pieces together into that puzzle and be like, oh, okay, we're here, but I'm missing like three or four pieces. And then when you get to the final conclusion, you're like, oh, wow. Whether you got there or not, you're kind of still stuck with the aha moment, essentially. You're like, oh, okay, I was right or I wasn't right, but this was still really solid. But honestly, I think it's a good time. I don't know how much longer it's going to be on HBO Max, but this is probably going to be one of the few movies I buy on Blu-ray. Hopefully, it comes with DVD so I can add it to the collection. But yeah, I think this is going to be one I purchase because this is it's really solid. I think everything the way I think mainly the way the story is written is incredible because again, there when you have a gray area in storytelling either you run with it or you stop it at a certain point. But it was a gray area the entire time between, and that takes a lot of work, right? So that you have to consider what your characters are doing and exactly what your story has been set up for, essentially, right? So, I mean, I'm looking at it at like a writer kind of standpoint. If you have that gray area, you have to roll with it. And if you don't, then well, your story's going to fall apart, right? And that's not to say that people can't figure it out, early enough and be like, oh, that's what you're gonna do. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But for what you're trying to deliver at the end in your conclusion, it could be bad. But I think his name was John Hancock. I mean, he did a great job with his idea, and I think that's hard to do nowadays with this kind of a story, like especially a whodunit. The last whodunit I saw was Knives Out, which I think was a good time, great time. But if you paid attention, you knew exactly who had done it by the end of the film. Like it wasn't such a shock to know exactly what had happened. But yeah, I think that'll wrap us up for this month's episode of February, January, February. But dude, who knows anymore? I'm still fucking living in
20,
sometime.
dude, it's still 2020, bro.
Dude, look, nothing's changed for me. To
That's
me, it's
funny.
just, dude, I can't even. My alarm clock tells me, hey, it's a weekday because I don't have alarms set on the weekends.
Huh?
Huh? But yeah, so hey, thanks for checking us out. We will always have stuff on our Mother podcast. Good Mother, Unversed. Marvel Talk should have dropped, I think, a few times this month when this comes out. But keep checking us out. If you want to send us an email, maybe there's a film you want us to review, give a watch at, that's bigfmoviepodcast@gmail.com. And while we're here, I am doing a stream of Kingdom Hearts marathoning. I don't know if I'll be done by this time. Maybe I will be, probably not, because Proud Mode, Critical Mode is going to probably kick me in my ass. Clearly, Zero EXP run did not do well for me, so I'm going to revisit that later on. And I know Danny's over there streaming at Negator7 on twitch.tv, and we got Jerry over there streaming at Jerry Omega. But yeah, check us all out, check out the fam, and we will see you guys next time for our next big fucking mood.
Can I help you?
I saw the for sale sign.
That was for another car.
Got a lot of miles on it. You a salesman?
No.
How's the trunk space?
Standard.
Mind if I take a look? I'm in the market.
It's not for sale.
All I need to do is take a look.
You must really like my car.
I do.